I'm Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. Hello, welcome to Wednesday. So today we're going to talk about the keys of Enoch, part 10, the people of God. Interesting. Key 1-1-3, pages 121 through 128. If you wanted to hear the full text reading, it is up on the channel. Hopefully the people who wanted to have already listened to it. So this key says, the people of God collectively create the vehicle which is used to open up the universe. So we'll keep using Disney's TVA and we'll continue that on for a while until I make the point that what he's talking about is the TVA. And some other tools for making her talks very esoteric work, not soteric. So let me say hi to some people who are here. Adric is first. He says, it's on. Aunt Nina is here with the peace sign, my favorite auntie. And Adrian Hicks says, let's go. Okay, so this key focuses on the divine blueprint and the power of choice. So I'm going to read some highlights because I want to talk about some stuff. Yes, the live tribe. This is the inner circle of the live tribe right here. Okay, so this key, this is what her talk says. This key was explained in terms of the higher thinking intelligence, which functions as a field of creative education in the repairing of the universes. The key words express the people of God as the evolutionary vehicle used for transposing divine knowledge throughout the universe. This divine knowledge enables the people of God to open up other expressions of intelligence and to redeem those expressions in the name of Yahweh. The keys of divine knowledge are transmitted to the human community by the order of Melchizedek as the human community becomes its own family unit of light. So that's his very basic explanation. Then he says a little bit later, and he uses a word, the second word I'm getting ready to say, that caused me a little, you tell me if it gives you a red flag. And people listening from the clouds, you can say hello as well. But everybody tell me if this second word doesn't give you a red flag. This reprogramming will take place during the cycle of time of the Great Cataclysm. This great cataclysm will begin by cosmic waves hitting the Earth prior to our solar system entering an electromagnetic null zone. Anybody says reprogramming to me, automatically my hackles are up. What do you mean reprogramming? But it's interesting he talks about the cataclysm. Do you guys know about the cataclysm cycles? If anybody's ever watched anything that Graham Hancock has done, now there are cataclysm cycles that the earth goes through. It's around 11,000 years, okay? We go through things like pole shifts where the North and South Pole change, okay? And when that happens, you know, you go from, where was, I think the South Pole, was it the South Pole? The North Pole was like in the middle of where Africa is at one point in time, and it was completely frozen. And where the South Pole and the North Pole are that are completely frozen actually had land and people living there. And we go through this pole shift and it changes gravity, and we go through times of like giant floods. The floods have been proven now. I mean, we know that there were great floods. We go through, I mean, think about the tidal wave that hit Africa and turned so the Sahara was like lush and lots of people lived there. It was like Eden. And this tidal wave was so huge, deposited so much sand on the Sahara that it became a desert. So about every 11,000 years, we go through these cataclysms. So it's interesting that he's talking about cataclysms and these electromagnetic things. What did he call them? Oh, disciplines of, no, that was later. Cosmic waves hitting the Earth prior to our solar system entering an electromagnetic null zone. So that's interesting, an electromagnetic null zone, because we're hit, not just our technology, but we just being a rock floating in space are hit with electromagnetic waves all the time. So that's one of the ways in which I look at like zodiac signs and things like that, in that not necessarily like, oh, I'm a Scorpio, so I sting people with my anger. That I think that's making excuses and using your birth sign to do so. But I think there is something, the zodiac signs are hundreds of thousands of years old. And I look at ancient things prior to colonization and imperialism and all those things to find truth. And I look at zodiac signs sort of like, we know that the earth is hit with electromagnetic waves and they can measure those and they make it through the atmosphere and they hit us. And I think about that, maybe where the planets are aligned at your moment of birth, when you leave the womb, you leave that insulator, that's insulating you from these electromagnetic waves. Maybe there's something to do with that moment that you leave. There are specific patterns of electromagnetic waves that hit you that maybe dictate a little bit. Maybe you're just a completely blank slate when you're born and depending on those waves. One of the things that you can watch now when it comes to electromagnetic waves is something called the Schumann resonance. So, Auntie, you have a wrench. If you can post a link, so just copy paste a link for the Schumann resonance, or anybody else who watches the Schumann resonance, if you can post that in the chat for people to look at, I think that would be cool. The Schumann resonance is the electromagnetic energy that the Earth is giving off. So it's not just that these other planets and where we are and how fast we're moving are sending electromagnetic waves to us. The Earth also has a frequency, it has a vibration, it's vibrating. And it sends electromagnetic pulses and it will react to solar flares. So, while we are very used to, it's kind of like when you're on a boat and it rocks and you get used to it. And then when you get off the boat, it's like, ooh, we are on this gigantic vibrating rock. We don't feel the vibration, but it definitely affects us because we're big bags of water and mush. So those are things when he's talking about these electromagnetic pulses, I'm like, there is some science behind this for sure. Hi, Spain Man. Thanks for coming in. Spain Man says I've read several of his books. Yeah, Graham Hancock. He's great in talking about those cataclysm cycles. And he's not the favorite of academic circles of archaeology because he doesn't just go along with whatever the mainstream narrative is. He's like, no, let's look at the whole thing. Let's look at the whole thing. Adrian says actions based off of zodiac signs are Judy self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, I think it can be too, and I think people use it as excuses and whatnot. Well, I'm a Taurus, so I like blankets. I think it was science when it was cosmology. When the ancient Egyptians and people are doing that, they were looking at things like that from a scientific perspective and not a, well, I'm a Libra, so I like to read. I don't think they were really looking at it like that. Leon says, I will be on the rewind. Okay. Thank you, Leon. He's number one on the replay gang. Auntie says, oh, the Schumann has an app you can download, and she has spelled it for us in there. So if you want to look at that. Oh, Adrian says, just self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. Yeah. If you use it as an excuse, I think, or if you just think, you read your horoscope and you're like, oh, that's exactly how my day is going to be. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think there's a lot more science behind that we don't necessarily know. Okay, so let's look at a couple more highlights. So then he says, he who created the earth will send up column upon column of fire and supersonic winds, and the sacred regions of the Tarim Basin will be cut off from both the lands of Russia and China like a tortoise shell of light. My thing is, I'm gonna get a little edgy here. My thing is, obviously, her talk, he's had this vision of Enoch and Melchizedek and Yahweh, and he is championing that Yahweh is the creator, although he makes some differentiations with, I almost wanted to say he who remains, the Ancient of Days, right? But there's some differentiations there. And maybe he gets into more of the hierarchy later. Okay. Oh, Ajark put up a link. Thank you. Yeah, for the Schumann. Yep. Okay. But the thing is, even here he says, he who created the earth. And there's so many different religions, especially ancient ones, who set up who tell you that the hierarchy is there's this God that's sort of detached. He's sort of up there. And that original sentient energy God created the original twins. Now, in some beliefs, the original twins are like two male gods. You have Enki and Enlil, right? In the Anunnaki. In Zoroastrianism, you have Ahura Mazda, and I can't remember the other one. What's it called? It's a D, I think, or a B. Other beliefs, it's a female and a male are the twins. But so many of the ancient beliefs were that, and the original who made the twins just sort of was out there and not so concerned about this one little tiny rock, right? But the twins are the ones who are interested in the rock. And so, in Gnosticism, you have the demiurge, so you sort of have, there's a good one and a bad one. It's like the creation of dichotomy, and that's what physical life is all about, is like polarization, right? So it makes me think when he says he who created the earth, are we talking about the demiurge? Are we talking about Ahura Mazda? Are we talking, who are we talking about? Are we talking about Yahweh? Because Yahweh was like some lesser storm god back in the day. He just wasn't anybody. Are we talking about Enlil? Who created the earth? It depends upon the way that you view the earth and what you believe. Now, obviously, her talk is saying Yahweh did everything, all the things. And Yahweh is the God of the Israelites. So this obviously is what he believes. But I think when we look at how we perceive the earth and what our paradigm is and how we perceive our purpose and meaning and place in the earth has to do with how we believe the earth is set up. Okay, so keep it going. Okay, the pole shifts. We want to talk about the pole shifts. Out of the continental rupture and shifting. So, okay, now I think he's talking about pole shifts, which, by the way, we're in one. Our poles are in a pole shift now. They are shifting. Okay. Out of continental rupture and shifting, a great bridge of land will rise out of the Pacific towards the south, and a great bridge of land will arise out of the Atlantic in the area of the equator. So this sounds like pole shifts, right? Where water levels are going to change drastically because of the pole shifts, centripetal and centrifugal force. And so if water levels change, then it'll seem like land is coming up, but it's actually that water is receding. So it's interesting. Adrian says, would that be similar to Remus and Romulus with Rome? Probably, yeah. There's this sort of, there's always the twins, right? And with a lot of these ancient cultures, which, Rome was later in the ancient cultures realm, still ancient. There was always this idea of there was this very detached creator God that was neither male nor female, that was just an entity. And out of entity gave these twins. And the twins gave, now in some beliefs, it's the good twin that created earth and physical existence, and in some it's the bad twin who created it, like the demiurge, right? So that gives you a paradigm. Do you view, just in general, not society, not what's, just if all things being equal, do you view the earth as something that wants to give you life, that wants to feed you, that could be wonderful, that, if you just breathe in fresh air and tilt your face to the sun, or look how beautiful the moon is at night, or wonder and awe at the stars? Do you see the beauty in existence that's been corrupted, obviously? Or do you see it as, like some people refer to the earth as a prison planet, that, it's karma, it's punishment, it's that we're put here to toil and be in pain, and we just have to suffer through. So it changes up the paradigm, but I would assume that, yeah, it's that same twin perspective. Sorry, my technology is trying not to work very well right now. Okay, so he's talking about the pole shifts there. That's what it sounds like to me, that he's saying this next cataclysm of pole shift. Now, if you are into Graham Hancock, if you've watched these cataclysmic cycles, you will understand that we are coming up on our time limit. So, and we know that the poles have started shifting, like that's been proven in modern science. So we're coming up on it. So maybe something's coming. Okay. So then he says, when the people of God bring together these higher disciplines of electromagnetic technology, the keys behind the pyramid sphinx for space travel and the science of electromedicine, they can create autonomous communities of light, which will be the stepping stones to the other world. So this makes me think of, and I wanted to play it for you guys, and I didn't get the link pulled up in time. I think Adrian could probably put it in the chat when he has a moment. I'm going to clear my throat. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. There is a place in, oh my gosh, I can't remember which country. And I feel silly saying the continent of Africa because it is gigantic. But there's a place where gravity doesn't work right. There's a road, and it's this road that's going up a hill. Like you can look and you can see that it's going down that way, and you look here and you can see that it's going up that way. Now, it's not a huge gradient, but it's definitely visible. You can see it. And there's a place on the road where if you pour water on the ground, it won't go downhill. It goes uphill. You set a water bottle down, it goes uphill. You put your car in neutral, it goes uphill. It's very, very interesting. Now, there are people in the comment section of that video like, oh, it's an optical illusion. It's this and that and that. But scientists have gone there to study this, right? It is not, if it was a simple optical illusion, scientists wouldn't continue to go there and study what the heck is happening. They would go, oh, it's an optical illusion and this is why, and yada, yada. They found specific things in the soil underground, which makes gravity act different. So it makes you think cataclysms, right? And tectonic plates, and things move. And then weird things happen. And maybe some of the ancient things that we've read about where it's like so-and-so was floating and or we have no idea how they made pyramids, blah, 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 even though other people have proven how they do that. Well, if you're in a place where gravity works different and things go uphill, it makes building the pyramid a little bit different. But these ancient technologies that he's talking about, that's exactly what I thought about when I watched that video, because possibly it's ancient technology. But, technology gets stolen and hoarded and whatnot, and things are colonized and imperial powers and whatnot, and we don't get to know what that is. But maybe in this age of everything in the dark coming to light, maybe we get to learn some stuff. Maybe more things like that hill will happen. Kimwelu. I'm totally butchering that, I'm sure. Kimwelu Hill. Yeah, so you guys look that up. It's really interesting. It's fun. It's fun to watch. And people get so excited about it. It's pretty cool. Spainman says a lot of NDE and LBL accounts say this is supposed to be one of the hardest places to incarnate into. Yeah. And people talk about, it's the heaviest place with the lowest vibration. And, and I don't know which. What I do know is that I'm much healthier and happier when I view the beauty. I acknowledge the terribleness, but viewing the beauty and appreciating the beauty, I think we can do both. My dogs have decided to have the zoomies, so I apologize if they hit the desk. Okay, so another one I wanted to just hit on was this phrase right here. And the people of God will govern those areas which are known as geophysical time warp areas. So it kind of sounds like we're back to people deciding who the chosen ones are, and the chosen ones get to govern, and they get to govern the technology. So this is where I start having an issue with what he's saying, because it sounds like it's the same elitist paradigm that he and people who believe that want to bring about. So to use the TVA, again, understand that the sacred timeline is the divine plan that he's talking about. It's the same kind of thing. It's a cosmic flow chart where every choice branches, but certain key events must align with this divine will, the divine will of this deity or Yahweh that he's talking about. Okay. So it's sort of like free will. How free is the free will? Free will versus predestination. Like what predestination means, like God's going to let you take every path known to man, but he knows you're going to get to this spot, or he's set up this one spot, this predestined destination is where you're going to end up being, right? He's always, you can do all these things, but you're going to end up there. Or predetermination, which is more like he's determining this path. So it's kind of like when you have the bumpers up on the when little kids bowl, and he's just going to sort of bat you back and forth in this determined path. So none of it's free again. Nothing is free, right? You don't get to make choices. You don't get to decide. You are predetermined or predestined according to her talk, right? Because it's what the deity wants. So Loki's struggle was always, am I destined to lose? That was always what Loki was saying. Hold on one sec, guys. Okay. Just had to check on something real quick. Okay. So Loki's struggle was always, am I destined to lose? Right? Because Loki was always losing, especially against the Avengers. If we look at, TVA, Loki then uses his free will. Like the TVA is trying to create this timeline, it is making it predestination with predetermination. It's setting up the timeline. You only have these guardrails, you can't do anything else. And you're going to end up here at the end of this timeline, right? So Loki used his free will, right, to break that predestination of the timeline. In the key of Hertog's key, the divine order, it's always order. In Hertog's, it's this hierarchy. It's the chosen people get to govern. It's a reprogramming. These are the words he's talking about, right? In this key, this divine order coexists and says there's this radical freedom, right? But the destination is already determined. How is that freedom? Is that radical freedom? Do we want that much freedom? Do we want to end up like Loki and having to hold the timelines together? How much freedom do we actually want or need, if any? Is there really any freedom of choice if the choices aren't equal? If we're being battered around and we can't just let the timeline, we can't just let our destiny, we can't just let the earth do what the earth do. Is there freedom at all? It's sort of like when I say, is there a choice when the choices aren't equal? Okay. Sort of like in these strict religious adherents, Abrahamic pretty much are the most strict. It is choose God or burn in hell. Follow Yahweh or burn in hell. Are those equal choices? They don't seem like equal choices, right? Hi, Snowman. Thanks for being here. Okay. Or for Hertog, choose the divine plan or die a painful death in the cataclysm. These don't sound like equal choices to me. And what kind of deity has to threaten you with torture and death to get you to choose them, right? Can you not just be good and then people will choose you? It's not a choice, it's control. That is control. And this is the timeline. This is why I've been using TVA. So this key that we're talking about warns against those who set themselves up as false archons or masquerading divine authorities. So not only now we have the chosen people, we have the reprogramming, we have the divine will, but don't listen to anybody else. Again, it's choose Yahweh or suffer a painful death. And don't listen to anybody else. Those are called false archons and they're bad. But then how do you know that Hertog and his visions are not also false archons? How would he know if the vision that he was listening to was not actually a false archon? Hi, Catting Up with the Joneses. Thanks for being here. Hertog says you have to discern between rigid dogma and true divine law. Well, if you have to use discernment, how different is rigid dogma and true divine law? And if it's listen to Yahweh or burn in hell, how can you discern the difference? So I kind of say insight, right? Insight is innate in human beings, maybe not all people, but in human beings, insight is innate. We can be insightful. We can think, we can problem solve, we can imagine things, we can work out problems, right? Discernment is not innate to human beings. Discernment in this day and age is not promoted because you have to sort of bulk up your insight, get a little learned, and to use discernment, you have to have all the facts to discern. So this is another one of those where the choices are not equal, right? And it's not radical freedom. This is what he's saying. Use discernment to choose Yahweh and his divine will or suffer a cataclysmic death. Okay. I'm discerning between choosing this deity or death. Okay. I mean, how is that really a choice, right? So, and in our society, discernment is actively disintegrated, right? Critical thinking, all of those kind of things. Kids are not taught how to do that. People are not taught how to do that. And we just don't do that. So, I have a question for you guys. Have you ever felt like your life was being pruned, like the timeline? Almost like those times when you have a really good idea and you're like playing it out in your head, and then later when you think about it, you've lost some of the details, or it's degraded over time, or even like you feel like you keep getting batted around and getting pushed back into these same situations or the same lot in life over and over again. Like something is batting you around like a fly, or doors just keep getting closed to you to almost force you in a direction, like things are being pruned like in the timeline. And if you ever felt like that, did you want to rebel? um did you want to fight it? Did you want to force your way through, or did you just go with the flow and just assimilate into whatever's happening? Was it sort of like, well, it's God's will for these bad things or these terrible things or these losses, these L's that I'm taking? Did you just assimilate into the timeline? Adric says all the time, LOL. Sometimes I feel like that too. And I wonder if discernment doesn't just come from when you get that feeling that something's playing with you, if you don't just stop, back up, and figure out where you can make your own inroads. Maybe we can't fight God, whomever that is. Maybe we don't have the same powers as the powers that be who can manipulate things. But what we always have the power to do is to stop. And sometimes I think our greatest power is in stopping. Oh, it's a brief one tonight. It's only 30 minutes. I appreciate you guys for being here. I know in some of the spaces that I frequent, there's some big creators going on tonight. So I appreciate those who came in. I appreciate the replay gang. I do want to wholeheartedly request that you guys come in this Sunday. This Sunday is the Goss Part 2. But as much as we talked about the Khazars, and I gave you receipts for that, and I showed you that lineage and that power play, that is one lineage of 3 that I'm going to show you guys. And if anything was surprising, or you were happy to get receipts about the Khazars, your mind's going to be blown about the Goths. It will be blown, and I will give you DNA evidence about that one. So I sure hope that you guys can come in on Sunday for Goths Part 2. If not, I will see you guys next Wednesday for another installment of The Keys of Enoch. And I'm going to show you a picture of my dog. Please like the video if you haven't already. It really helps the algorithm to know what kind of things you like. Share where you think it's appropriate, especially to someone who you think needs to hear it. And don't forget to check out some of the wilder Pivot Point Wednesday shows. And last, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to break down complex concepts that make the esoteric not so teric, helping you on your journey to become your most authentic self. By subscribing, you'll join a community that thrives on curiosity and growth, and you'll never miss out on insights and some wild discussions. Let's uncover the universe together. Bye.